So let's say you're interested in finding out the real world routing that a particular flight would take. I'll go through all the ways that I'm aware of that you can do this. Okay, starting with the most straightforward one, which is to pull it straight from either FlightAware or Radar Box. So let's just search a particular flight number. So in this case, I've chosen SQ24 from Singapore to JFK. And you click on the FlightAware option, which is normally one of the top few. Okay, so you can see SQ24. You just look down here, scroll down a bit to the right. Okay, and you see this routing over here. So let's copy it and paste it to SkyVector. So you just click on the flight plan section here, paste it, and press enter. And wow, look, that's the routing, but it's not the full routing. Okay, so there's a caveat to this. For FlightAware, they only show the full routing for outbound flights from the US, okay, and some other countries as well, but only outbound flights will have the full routing revealed. Inbound flights to the US only have the section entering US airspace, or sometimes even nothing at all. So the reason why the first waypoint over here is Pugal is because if you zoom in over here to SkyVector, you see this is Pugal here. The next waypoint here is Pazro, or Pazro, however you want to pronounce it. And it's on the border between Fukuoka FIR and Anchorage Oceanic FIR. So this is already entering US airspace, even though, it's still quite a bit from destination. And therefore, you don't see any of the routing that's all the way from Singapore to waypoint Pugal. Versus something like SQ23. So this is from JFK to Singapore. You click on this one. So this is an outbound flight from the US, right? Okay, let's take a look at this. So Kuwait all the way to Mabal. Let's copy and paste it to SkyVector. And boom, you can see that the entire routing is reviewed all the way from the first waypoint after the departure out of JFK, waypoint Kuwait, all the way down to Mabal, which connects to the arrival to Singapore. So Mabal over here. Okay, let it load. Yeah, there you go. Mabal over here. So outbound from the US, full routing is reviewed. Okay, and this is the same thing for Canada as well. Outbound, full review. Inbound, you get nothing, or sometimes just the Canadian portion or the US airspace portion. Same thing for Mexican flights. Outbound, full review. Inbound, you get either nothing or just some portions. Okay, so this is as long as they pass through US airspace, Canadian airspace, and Mexican airspace, you will see at least some portion of the flight. You are likely to see at least some portion of the flight routing on FlightAware. Okay, if it's outbound from passing through these airspaces, then you're likely to get the full review. So, however, there's an exception to this rule, okay, which is, let's take a look here. This example, Cathay 888 from Hong Kong to Vancouver. So this is going from Hong Kong to Vancouver, and they'll pass through US airspace. So you only expect a portion with US airspace to have the routing, right? But you scroll down here, and let's look at this. So copy it and paste it SkyVector. And boom, you see the full routing is available. So all the way from Ocean here, this is the first waypoint after the SID, the last waypoint the SID to be correct, and then Vancouver all the way routing to Vancouver. But this is not always the case. If you just scroll down a bit, let's go to Saturday, 6th July, just 10 days prior, you can see it starts now from waypoint Opulo. Okay, let's copy it and see where this waypoint Opulo is. And look, waypoint Opulo is here. Also in Fukuoka FIR, it's the first, or rather the previous waypoint before entering US airspace here, or Moto. So, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. Okay, your best bet is simply to search for the call sign on Google and then click on the FlightAware option. By the way, the great thing about this FlightAware is that for Australian and New Zealand flights, so any flight that passes through Australian or New Zealand airspace, the full routing is reviewed no matter the direction. So for example, I'm just going to show you SQ237. This is from Singapore to Melbourne. Okay, just click over here. So you can see Anito all the way to Abi. Okay, so this is going to Melbourne. Okay, Anito to Abi. And you see that the routing is starts from here. So this is the first waypoint after the departure, the Anito departure from Singapore, and all the way routing down to Melbourne. Okay, and if you just look at SQ238, which is the return sector, okay, so it may not be available because it's 9 a.m. from Melbourne. So some of the routes they don't populate that early. Oh, but already it's been populated. So you can see here. So Kappa, which is the first waypoint after departure, all the way to Yugibo. Okay, however you want to pronounce this waypoint here, which is the first waypoint of the arrival to Singapore. So Australia and New Zealand, full routing reviewed regardless of the direction. For US, Mexico, Canada, outbound, you get a full review. Inbound, some of it. Sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't. You just search the call sign and just find out whether the routing is available there or not. Now, there's a second option, which is not flight aware, but well, let's take a look at this. Okay, so this is SQ322 from Singapore to London Heathrow. If you click on the flight aware page here, well, you don't see anything. There's nothing here. There's no route over here. I just click on the previous flight. Oop, there's nothing as well. So flight aware only shows for those cases that I covered previously: US, Canada, Mexico, Australia, New Zealand airspaces. Now, but there's another huge part of airspace in the world, which is the European side. And how you're going to do it is, how you're going to see the flight is through radar box. Okay, so this one you have to scroll down a little bit, or sometimes because radar box may not be a very popular option, or you just have to search SQ322 radar box, you can see here. Okay, and you're likely to just click on the first option here, ANF radar box, this website. You can see estimated departure 1 hour 8 minutes. Okay, and if you scroll down on the flight info page here, this gives you the full routing. Okay, so yeah, it's very good actually. And if you compare it to, let me just pull up the SQ24 page again. So SQ24, you can see here that the SQ24 page doesn't have any speeds, or doesn't have any speeds or step altitudes. It just has the series of waypoints. Same thing for the SQ231. No speeds, no altitudes, just waypoints. Okay. Australia, you do get the waypoints. So let's say SQ237. Okay, SQ237. You scroll down here, you do see. So mark decimal 83. That's what they found. Flight for 340 initially, and then they put the different step clients. So here they want to step up to 350. Here now they change to 493 knots, and then after that, different waypoints. You can read it here. Same thing for radar box. The full initial cruising speed, initial cruising altitude, and different step altitudes are fully reviewed over here. Okay, which is one of the good things about these Australia, New Zealand, and European airspace flights. Okay, so this is the full routing that's available. So any flight that passes through European airspace, okay, any flight, regardless of direction, you get the full routing available. But this one takes a while to, rather, it only populates a couple hours before departure. So from my experience, about 2 hours prior, you can check. It will likely be there. Sometimes it's a bit earlier, sometimes it's a bit later. And sometimes the website just doesn't load the routing at all for whatever reason. Yeah, they just all flights are down. Yeah, perhaps the source they're getting it from is not showing it. Yeah, but it's pretty reliable. You're pretty reliably able to see the routings for this US base. Okay, there are of course some exceptions. So previously, one of the exceptions that I was able to find was SQ336. This is to Charles de Gaulle. So let's check this one here. Yeah, so you can see the routing is not available. Okay, but okay, scheduled departure 2 hour 50 minutes. Let's check for this one here. 15th July. Let's see whether the routing was available. Yeah, the routing was not available here as well. So somehow for certain countries, maybe certain airspaces, the routing is just not available. So what I found is that these flights to Paris, the routing doesn't show up. Yeah, the routing isn't available. But most other flights, most other destinations in European airspace, internal European shuttles, flights that pass through European airspace, like for example Dubai to LA, they pass through Europe airspace if they route this way across the Atlantic, or Dubai to JFK, they route through European airspace. If they pass through European airspace, the routing is very likely to be available, with certain exceptions. And this should cover you nicely for uh, maybe I'd say, well, 70% of the flights that you do, depending on what sort of flight that you do. If you do a lot of intra-Asia flying, then unfortunately this won't be very relevant for you. But if you do flights, long hauls, especially to Europe, US, Australia, then this will be pretty relevant and pretty useful. But okay, not all is lost if you're doing an intra-Asia flight. So let me just pull out this example. So this is the radar box page of SQ833 Shanghai to Singapore. Okay, you can see that very reliably, no routing available. Okay, yep, no routing available. You just get this because this tracked by ADSB. Yeah, this is the ADSB path that the flight took. Basically, this is basically the flight radar track that they took. And we can actually use this in combination with sky vector to deduce the routing. Okay, so this is a very manual task. Very menial work that very menial bit of work that we're doing, but it's possible. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in a bit over here. Okay, and I'm going to pull out the sky vector page. So I'm just going to delete this over here. Okay, and you just click on world high. So and ensure that world high is clicked. So these are the high altitude airways in the world. Okay, so sky vector, just put world high on, and we're gonna zoom in over here to Shanghai, which is over here. Okay, so Shanghai Pudong, so the airport is over here. If you go, okay, I'm just gonna bring this one over here so we can look carefully. So you can see that from Pudong, okay, the signal isn't particularly good, but you can see that they take this runway. I believe it's 16 right. Okay, if I'm not mistaken, this should be runway 16 right. And see they make a slight left turn and then a bit of a further left turn and then right turn down south. And then further bit now tracking fully south to this island over here. Yeah, somewhere around here. Okay, somewhere around Zhoushan. So if you look here, okay, you try to take a look. Now, of course, it'd be very helpful if the departure chart for Pudong, so you can match the establishment departure paths and to see roughly what they're gonna fly. But I can tell I've already done the work, and the departure that they fly is the Hotel Sierra November 82 Delta departure of runway 16 right. Okay, if I'm not wrong, it's 16 right. Okay, so and it terminates at Zhoushan. This is Hotel Sierra November. So it's the Zhoushan 82 Delta departure. The routing, okay, you can check it, brings you somewhere over here. And then if you look at the radar box page over here, well, there aren't really a lot of options. They curve slightly to the left and then they turn right and then they pretty much track down the coast of China. Okay, and there really was only one option, one particular airway that they take. Okay, so good airspace knowledge is also important in deducing these flights. You need to know that most of in Asia, most flights they route via airways, especially China. Okay, in China, you basically will always fly on airways. Sometimes air traffic control asks you to offset a few miles left or right of the airway, but you will be following airways. Okay, this is because Chinese airspace is very heavily restricted, or they're very tightly controlled by the military. See all of these areas here, these are all restricted airspace. Yeah, that no one can fly because they're doing their military training stuff. Yeah, so all commercial flights they will pretty much strictly route via the airways, and especially politically kind of tense around here. So they will definitely follow the airways. Okay, so this is the airway, the Whiskey 13 airway from Zhoushan all the way down. Okay, and if you look at the page over here, you can see they come down pretty much sort of here, and then they come down, okay, then south of around a beam Kaohsiung, they suddenly turn left inwards and they track down again. Okay, so they turn left maybe towards Hong Kong and then they track south. So let's try and figure out what's going on here. So if you follow this, this is now the Whiskey 13 airway has turned into the Mike 503 airway, it seems. Okay, so tracking south over here, and then a beam Kaohsiung, right? We said a beam Kaohsiung, and Kaohsiung is, yes, Kaohsiung's over here. So here, and then we see that they turn inwards. Okay, so they turn inwards. Okay, so we can guess that it is likely this airway, and then we see that they track towards Hong Kong. So somehow they go towards Hong Kong, and then they track suddenly south. And then now we are at a loss because what's going on here? There's no airway that connects nicely. Like they, they, I don't think they went this way. I don't think they went this way. Okay, this is a unidirectional airway here. So did they go this way? And then no, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. And also, you know, Hong Kong air traffic control likely gave them a series of directs to fly to, likely. So you can see this path here, and then um, down here. Okay, this is pretty jagged because they are doing a lot of weather deviations, South China Sea to avoid thunderstorms. But uh, the only routing that they really can fly, okay, is this. Okay, this is the Lima 642 airway. You can see roughly they generally follow this direction, Lima 642, because you know they crosses over a bit of Vietnam over here, just a bit of weather deviation that they were making left and right of track. But basically, it will be the Lima 642 airway down. And the Lima 642 airway, okay, starts from somewhere here, Aptos. So this is in Hong Kong, FIR. Aptos is the first sort of legit waypoint, and then it comes down here. So the question is, did they fly? You know, was the routing from here down Romeo 200, and then somehow or somewhere maybe Victor 591 to somewhere to Hong Kong, and then coming down here to uh, Aptos, and then Lima 642? Well, there's only one way to find out, and that way to find out is to overlay this page over here, okay, the one that we are confused about, with the actual uh, charts. Okay, so I'm just going to use this page over here so you can see. Okay, I'm going to also, okay, I believe you can turn off day-night layer so it's a bit brighter. So just take a screenshot of this. Okay, take a simple screenshot of the area. Then just remember roughly what area you were zoomed in about. So we were zoomed in somewhere over here. Okay, gonna close that section over here so it doesn't intrude. So something like this. Okay, we can look over here, we can see. Okay, so there was no Hainan Dao over here. It's just south. So Hong Kong, Hainan wasn't in sight, a bit of Taiwan over there. So we do the same thing here. So zoom in. Okay, something like this. Okay, something like this. Maybe we include a bit of Aptos to help us. Okay, hopefully our original screenshot has Aptos. So just take a screenshot of this. And what you do is you go to Photop, okay, photop.com. So it's a free, basically a free version of Photoshop. Okay, it has most of the functionality that you'll need from Photoshop, barring some pretty advanced stuff. For average user, it pretty much is a free Photoshop available on web. So you just go new project. Oops, actually you shouldn't do that. You should open from computer, go to screenshots, and you find the one that you're interested in. So it's you overlay the sky vector one first. So sky vector one, opacity leave it 100. There you go, file, open and place. Scroll down here and just put on your, yep, this is your chart overlay for from radar box. So you bring the opacity down. So normally I bring it down to something like this. Okay, and the reason for doing so is so that you can align the coastlines. Okay, and you can see there's a reason why I use radar box instead of flight radar, because that particular zoom level, the discrete zoom level that you can achieve through your mouse wheel, corresponds very nicely to roughly what zoom level you can get in Sky Vector. So somehow or other, they match up very nicely. You don't have to do much manipulation. So I'm gonna move it around, just make sure that it does align, which you can see that it pretty closely does align. Yeah, so a bit off here there, but okay. So let's align here, and then let's check on this side whether it is aligned. Okay, it's very close. Okay, it's very close, and you can see here. You can see here now. This thing is really the smoking gun. Okay, you can see that first of all they come in through here to Le Parc. So okay, let me just check the name of the waypoint here. It looks like Le Parc. Okay, which is this one here, Le Parc. So they come in Mike 503 as we expected. And then what happens? They pretty much, yeah, so you can tell that the routing, they found Romeo 200. Okay, Romeo 200. Okay, but then as they were entering here, because they enter Hong Kong FIR over here, right? So they'll be speaking now to Hong Kong Air Traffic Control. So this is uh, Shanghai FIR. This is Hong Kong FIR. So passing Tolak, they enter Hong Kong airspace. So they come here. And then Hong Kong ATC tells them, okay, you can direct to a certain waypoint, okay, to save them a bit of extra fuel. There's no need for them to fly all the way, whatever the original plan routing was. But you can see that they gave them a direct to this waypoint here, .me, right? Because if you match it here, so the aircraft will be here, and they say, okay, Singapore 833 direct .me, and then they fly direct .me. So from this, you can deduce that the routing that actually is found is Mike 503, okay, Le Parc, okay, Romeo 200 to BBAM, Alpha 470 to .me. Okay, you can deduce that. Okay, and then after somewhere here, while they're flying towards .me, they say, okay, you can further direct a different waypoint. Okay, and well, guess what? Now they fly towards NROM, this waypoint here, NROM. Okay, so from here, .me, and then the next waypoint in their plan is NROM here. Okay, NROM, and then the next waypoint is Salax. So I okay, even though it passes over this, I highly doubt that this is part of their waypoint, because if they're playing discrete waypoints here, because you can see they're not following any airway. So from .me onwards, it's already discrete waypoints, which are not part of any airway system. You can tell that they're not part of any airway system because there is no discontinuity. So for example, you see Conga here. This is part of the airway. So Victor 2, Victor 3, and then it is part of this airway system. But NROM, Sanku, they're not. Salax also isn't because there's nothing here. But Osumo is. So it is highly unlikely that they plan Osumo. It's likely it's NROM direct to Salax or Sulux, however you want to pronounce it. And what's next? So after Solux, okay, NROM, Solux, and then now they go towards here, okay. And now it's not okay. So unfortunately, I didn't capture it, but you can just have to trust me that I've done the groundwork. But they basically got a direct to NBOC from air traffic control. Yeah, direct NBOC. So NBOC is somewhere down over here. It's a yeah. Okay, you can roughly sort of see if I add give it a rectangle here. Let's see. Let's add a rectangle, and then I take this. Let's rotate it around. Yeah, so this is why photo P is my preferred method of doing this. Yeah, you can just pull out a quick ruler here like that. Okay, so somewhere over here you just match it over here. So somewhere over here. Okay, so indeed, you have to trust me that they got direct to Salux, and then they got direct to NBOC. Okay, so Salux direct to NBOC from air traffic control, but their flight plan was to Aptos. So how do I know that? Because, well, I'll just let it in a secret. I've analyzed this particular flight previously, so I know, using the same method that I just showed you, I deduced that they APDOS is part of their flight plan. Okay, so the routing through Hong Kong FIR is 503 Lepak Romeo 200 BBAM Alpha 470.me, then direct to NROM, direct Salax, then direct APDOS, and then Lima 642 all the way down to uh, 642 all the way down to, okay, let me see here. So I believe it's SPOP, SPOP, Lima 642 to SPOP, and then Quebec 801 to SBUM, okay? And then down to Quebec 802 to Ilalo to join the Ilalo arrival to Singapore. Okay, so this is the routing that they fly. So a bit of understanding and knowledge of the general airspace that you're flying in also helps us. So because I know that Ilalo is pretty much the only start of any star that start of any arrival to Singapore. So I know that they route to Ilalo via this particular routing. But if you're not sure, you can do the exact same thing. You can just pull this, screenshot this, pull out the radar box page, and then yeah, try and deduce what sort of routing that they found. Okay, but near the departure or the arrival airport, it's more helpful to roughly get an idea of where the SIDS and the stars, their terminal, where they terminate and where they originate. So you can roughly sort of guess where. So for Singapore, that's Ilalo. There's also Marbal. So yeah, Marbal here, Ilalo here, and there's the Arama, direct Tebun. So Arama. Okay, Tebun is not here, but the aircraft will flight plan Arama Tebun to join the Tebun Star. Okay, so then there's also I believe it's, I don't think it's called the Surga arrival anymore. I think it's called Gakno. Okay, I'm not exactly sure, but this is one of the sudden arrivals into Singapore, Mike 635. Then there's also the Opdos, but this might be a departure. So yeah, just take a look at the SIDS and stars. They just find the waypoints, and you can find waypoints very easily by searching this. So for example, if I want to find uh, Paspu, okay, so random waypoint here, you can find Paspu here. Okay, you just, the cursor will bring you there. Okay, this waypoint is not on the world high chart, so let's just find, for example, Ilalo. So Ilalo, the cursor will just slap you right in there. That's the middle, the waypoint where it is. Okay, to be you should be aware of this is the particular routing. So some knowledge of the basic airspace in your arrival and destination airport, or rather destination and origin airport, is important, and it will help you a lot to reduce the routing. Okay, and yeah, that's about it. You can apply it for pretty much every single flight that you can do. Okay, now there's another thing I would like to cover, which is that this particular flight, okay, I've chosen SQ833 because it is very convenient. Okay, Chinese airspace means you don't really have a lot of routes to choose from. Okay, also over here, over the South China Sea, pretty discrete airways. Yeah, you can pretty much guess, because obviously you're not going to get a perfect overlay of this of the you're not going to get a perfect overlay on photo P, but you get pretty close, and if you get pretty close and the airways are far away enough, you can make a very good guess, like you just saw me do earlier, of what the actual routing they'll fly is. However, just take a look at this. So imagine you get an overlay, something like this. Like, how are you going to tell what routing they file, right? Just looks like a complete mess here. You won't be able to tell this. And also here, it's going to be really hard to tell whether they file this airway, or is it, this one, or whether they receive a direct from air traffic control. Basically, sometimes it gets really difficult to tell. And there are a couple tricks, okay, to sort of guess how they do it. So one way I like to do it is, that outbound flights from the US, okay, into Japan, or just outbound flights from the US, the full routing is available, right? So if you can find an outbound flight from the US that routes through this way, passes down here uh, into Singapore, for example, and it, let's say, passes through this area, then you can get a pretty good idea of what sort of airways are found by that particular airline. Because airlines, they normally they stick to certain routes. Okay, for example, on the European flights, certain airlines like British Airways, they will route their flights through uh, UAE airspace. I think Air France does the same. Qantas, I'm not too sure, but certain airlines they'll route through here. KLM, I think also they also route through here. But so, for example, Singapore Airlines, they never ever route their flights through here. Very rarely. I've never actually seen that happen before. It's always through India and through Iran airspace. Yeah, through Iranian airspace and then down over here. Yeah, so that's how they've done it. Previously, when Iran airspace was closed, then they'll route north over here, then come down, over here through northern India. That's how they would do it in the past. They never ever route through UAE airspace. So different airlines, they sort of have different preferences for routes to fly. And if the aircraft are at the same area at the same time, it's reasonable to assume that they'll take the same set of airways. So that is one way you can tell if it's not very obvious from this. And also you can look out for things like the previous flight, the previous flight, uh, maybe to the destination, what sort of routing that they took, if it's available, if you can find it. And also sometimes, okay, for example, Japan. Japan is one of those headache routes if you do intend to sort of guess what sort of routing that they fly. Okay, even with your best efforts and attempts, it can be very difficult to guess. And the reason is very simple. There are just so many options, right? For example, from Tokyo to Singapore, Tokyo Narita to Singapore, you can take this oceanic route down here, okay, via the okay, if it loads, I can show it to you. Okay, so basically this is Narita over here. There's a departure that takes you down south. If I can find it. Okay, I believe it's one of these waypoints. I can't exactly remember which particular waypoint it is, but basically there's a departure that takes you down south over here. Okay, that's one particular way to get out of uh, Narita. There's another one that also takes you somewhere around here. So you fly along the southern part of Japan down here. And coming down here, you can choose to come this way down and fly this way, or you can choose to fly this airway down here and along the eastern coast of Taiwan. And if you come down from here, you have two options. You can either choose to join up and merge down here, or you can choose to come by this airway down and then pass through the Philippines south of Manila down back to Singapore. Okay, so you see there are many different options to route from Narita to Singapore, which makes it a headache if you want to guess, because you can look at the previous flight. There are a couple of flights from Narita to Singapore every day, right? But even if you look at the flight that departed like 30 minutes ago, like let's say uh, SQ637 departs before SQ11. Okay, if you can somehow figure out the routing for SQ637, you take a look at it and say, oh, okay, this is the routing that they flew. But SQ12 could take a completely different routing, which is what that regularly happens. Sometimes take the same routing, sometimes it's completely different. Okay, but in general, this can give you a better idea of what sort of routing that they fly. Okay, so it's nice. I also use SimBrief's calculate and compare tool to guess, to take a look at which route will burn more fuel. So for example, you have identified three routes that the uh, flights regularly take. For example, I'll just show you SQ11. Okay, let's just take a look at SQ11 over here. So SQ11, SQ11 from Narita to Singapore. So you can see that today, they took this route, okay, down over here, this way. But then yesterday, okay, this is from LA to Narita. Let's get the Tokyo to Singapore sector. Oh, okay, this one is now is the same, okay, but okay, let's see the previous day before. Huh? Well, they all look to be the same. Okay, let's see this. Okay, interestingly, they all look quite similar. So they've chosen. Okay, so flight dispatch has chosen this particular route for those few days. But I guarantee you, somewhere along here, you see a difference. Yeah, just let it load. Okay, hopefully it loads. So this one is also still the same. It's still, you can still see this the same general routing here. Narita to Singapore. Okay, this one is still the exact same routing. Well, that's very strange because when I checked it, pretty much every day they had a different routing. I can see that today this one is different. So you see this one is different. Okay, this one is down here. So how would you know that they're gonna fly this versus that, right? Like, and there are many options. Like they could have, instead of going this way along Taiwan, they could have chosen this way along. Yeah, you just don't know. There's just no way to tell. So uh, SimBrief's calculate and compare to will tell you different routes and which one will burn more fuel. Okay, I like to take the one that burns less fuel if there are few options that you simply cannot choose from. Or sometimes, Singapore Airlines, the sister arm is Scoot, right? So Scoot, sometimes you can also get a decent idea of what sort of routing that they will fly. Okay, so but not all is doom and gloom. Okay, if you're trying to find out between Tokyo and Singapore, okay, Tokyo to Singapore is pretty hard to figure out. But in general, Singapore to Tokyo is much easier to figure out, and the reason is this: so there are only two departures. Okay, there's only one real departure that they normally fly. So it's the Toman departure. And then here comes the question of whether they will take Lima 625, they would take this airway, or they take November 884. And the reason is because, see, these two airways, they diverge quite a bit. So 884 crosses here over into Manila airspace, Manila FIR, and it goes this way up to Japan. But 625, it takes this routing over here, north of Manila, and then normally they go this way. Sorry, this is not 625, this is 625. Oh no, this is 625. Okay, so 625 normally will go this way, and they'll track here. So normally they'll do this something like this, or they'll do something like this. Okay, depending. Normally it's something like this and up to Japan. Yeah, but you can see that they take vastly different routes. But you can also see that the decision is made at this waypoint here, Lumso. So if you see a Scoot flight, okay, before your, for example, there's a Scoot flight from Singapore to Narita that departs before SQ 636. So if you see the Scoot flight coming up here, it comes here, and then it goes this way. More than likely, the SQ flight will take the same routing. Yeah, because Scoot and Singapore Airlines, they're the same under the Singapore Airlines group. Okay, they probably have different flight dispatch software, possible, but I found that in general the routings are very similar. So if the Scoot flight goes this way towards Narita, the SQ flight will almost always take this routing. Okay, you can also check, and compare, see previous flights, and then you can be reasonably assured that if you flight plan this one, you're going to get the exact same routing that the SQ flight would take. Okay, instead of this. So, well, that was probably quite long, and if you're not interested in this, probably a bit boring. Okay, but that is about as comprehensive of a knowledge that I have on guessing the real world routings that different flights would take. Yeah, and you may ask yourself, what's the point, right? Like, what's the point? Like, do you really need to know all this information? Well, no, you don't. There's no real utility for this, but it's just for your intellectual satisfaction, if I may put it that way. And also, if you're doing flight simulator, you're doing a long haul flight, it is a sort of a nice feeling if you're because there are a couple airways here, right? You choose the correct one, you file the flight, yeah, there. Okay, especially long haul flights, they can be many different variations. Okay, and also different conflicts. For example, during the time where there was the peak of the conflict here, Iran airspace, a lot of aircraft would avoid it, and then they would route this way down. But if you just use the SimBrief default route, you would fly right through Iranian airspace. Okay. But if you actually use these methods to check, then you will of course fly the real-world routing, which is a bit more exotic, right? It's a bit more interesting to fly different exotic routes. Yeah, and sometimes like so for example Singapore to New York. Okay, sometimes they will fly the polar route. Sometimes they will take the Pacific route. Sometimes they will take the Atlantic route. So there are a few different options. Yeah, and how do you know what route they're gonna take? It's only through this. Okay, so just to the extra bit of accuracy, and also to align yourself with the real world flight dispatch software, because they will have calculated based on the fuel burn, whatever. Of course, you can also use the SimBrief calculator and compare to and see which one is better for fuel burn and make the decision from there. Check the en route weather also. See that your route avoids the weather as much as possible. You can make these decisions. Okay, and yeah, and if you apply this method of overlaying with photo P, okay, you can take a look at Singapore Airlines flights to Phuket. Okay, I haven't checked of late what sort of routings that they fly, but I can tell you that it's very interesting, at least in the past. Okay, you would think that they would take the more straightforward one, this routing up here north, Romeo 325, and then the get arrival to Phuket. But no, they actually don't fly this routing. What they actually do is something like this. Hat Yai. Sorry, not Hat Yai. They would fly to yeah, actually no, I think it is Hat Yai. So they'll fly to Romeo 325 to Alor, and instead of going this way, they would flight plan this way and Epcot, and then to do Epcot arrival to Phuket. So this is one of the things that I figured out by using this. Right, this is the figured out the actual routing for the flight to Phuket. Singapore Airlines flights to Phuket. Whereas the AirAsia flights, they will just fly this normal routing. Why they do that? Well, honestly, I have no idea. Okay? I have no idea why they do that, but it is something that they do. And but of course they're counting on air traffic control to give them a series of directs, because if this airspace, this is restricted airspace, if it's not in use, they'll probably just get a couple directs once they get handed over to backup control. Another thing is, when you're departing Singapore, Singapore Airlines, there used to be this departure that they would tend to use quite a lot, the Suna departure. Now I think it's been replaced with the Mibel departure, if I'm not wrong. But there's this departure that will take you down south over here. So this is quite an interesting departure, right? That you come, instead of turning left down here that you normally would if you're departing off the runway 02 left or center. Instead of turning left, you actually do something like this on your route through this. And the only way to know whether a flight would be taking this or that is by looking up at radar box. Yeah, and normally they only take this routing if they intending to take November, correction. If they're intending to take, let's see. Well, if they're intending to take Papa 574, the Papa 574 airway, yeah, across the Bay of Bengal. Yep. And the reason is because sometimes there can be a bit of congestion over here along these airways, and because all the flights they depart around the same time. They're all heavy. They cruise at low levels. So some airlines, in order to get, in order not to take on a massive delay, they'll just route this way down south. Yeah. So I've seen Qantas flights. I've seen some Singapore A380 flights. They will take this routing down here south. But nowadays, majority of them they'll take this airway routing. It's very fascinating. It's a very fascinating topic. If you delve more into it, you can really learn a lot about different airspaces. Yeah, different airspaces. They can figure out, the different rules, the different things that they do. For example, why do all flights pretty much never get a direct? Right? Like, why is this? Yeah, it's because once you put out Sky Vector, you see all this restricted airspace. Yeah, they use for military training here over the South China Sea. That's why all the flights they have to go all the way out to Toman, and then they come here. Sometimes Singapore ATC will give you direct from here, like some this point onwards. But these are pretty much always active, yeah, or rather not active flights, and you can't just route directly through there. Right, thanks for watching, and well, let me know if you're interested in more.